This is the Coming Home Podcast with John Allen. And here we are again. Welcome, everybody, to this episode of the Coming Home Podcast with John Allen. I am your humble host, John Allen. For those of you who are watching me on YouTube, that's where I want you to be. That's where, look at these beautiful smiling faces here. I want you to be watching. But of course, you can listen on any major podcast platform of your choice. Regardless, if you look in the description of this episode, you will see 3 links where you can click in if you'd like to give a donation to support my work and what I'm doing here on the Coming Home Podcast with John Allen. So here we are, Tommy Garry from Freight Farms. You are installment number 3 of the Freight Farms series, if we can call it that. Welcome, Tommy. Welcome.
Thanks so much, John. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
You know, like I say, you're the third part of this so-called series. Let's call it a series. First, I spoke with Caroline. Then I spoke with Mario, and now it's you. And this I believe is a testament to the interest that I have in Freight Farms and what you guys are doing, how you guys can potentially change the very fabric, and I don't say that glibly, the very fabric of American society. When I think about food deserts, and what that means to city environments. And also when I think of the ecological footprint that traditional farming has, and Freight Farms counterbalances that. What does all that mean to you? I have my view of what all that means to me, but what does that mean to you as an employee at Freight Farms?
Yeah, it's a great question. I
don't even give you time to breathe. We're just jumping right into
we're jumping right in. You're jumping right in.
Sorry, man.
No, it's all good.
Too much coffee. Blame it on the coffee.
And mine hasn't kicked in yet, so we'll see how this goes. But I think in regards to our impact and our overall mission, you hit it right on the head. That's a critical reason why the team has grown to where it is today. So just over the last year and a half, 2 years, with the effects of the pandemic, it's really been a perfect catalyst for the company. And as a result, we've grown. And the team is now twice the size as it was in 2019. And I think there's just been this sort of macro global recognition about how do you join occupation and purpose with impact.
Yeah.
And I think I came to that realization on an individual level, but there's also, like I said, this global recognition of that. So for me personally, I see the ag tech world, the agricultural world, and improvements within that vertical, let's call it, as one of the most tangible ways you can have impact on this planet that we live on from an environmental standpoint. And that's where I started to gravitate towards it. And I think my colleagues would share the same sentiment.
It's quite interesting that this is yet again an example of a period of growth in spite of the pandemic. You said part of what you said now is that you guys have kind of capitalized, or you've seen a window that is open. How so? How has I would think, let me just make a guess here. I would think that there are individuals who may have lost their job, or maybe they didn't lose their job. Maybe they were able to work from home, but I sure have reflected a lot more and I'm quite the reflective person in general, but especially now over this past year with more time at home, more time isolated. Mm-hmm. Could it be that introspection, that period of reflection has led people into this purpose called humanity, this purpose called the environment, and then seen Freight Farms and you guys' methods as a catalyst to bring that thing to life? Yeah.
I think that's a really interesting scope and lens that you look at that with. And I think you're absolutely right. A big part of my job is talking with prospective farmers, and you hear a lot of that sort of sentiment on our conversations. It's, you've had this moment of introspection. You've seen what's going on a global scale. in regards to the coronavirus, but also its impact on the economy and supply chain, and people are now reconsidering different ways and different processes of things. So I think that is certainly encouraging a new wave of freight farmers coming to us.
Yeah.
But on a sort of macro level, this is typically how I think. I see the larger, or I try to look for the larger trends. The coronavirus, I think, has really exposed the challenges the challenges with global supply chain. It's amazing that we have this interconnected economy, but there presents some challenges with that, especially when it comes to specialization. But supply chain, I think it's no secret. You see incidents like the Suez Canal and production in China being just overflowing right now, but you don't have the freight carriers to get goods across the planet. Those, I think, are pieces to the puzzle, in that there's this recognition that the supply chain right now is incredibly stressed, in particular the food supply chain.
Yes.
Communities we've seen here in the United States during the pandemic, you go to your local grocery store and there would be a very limited supply of fresh produce. That trend has caused people, not only on an individual level, but in a municipal, a institutional, a corporate level, to rethink how can we mitigate that risk within the supply chain.
So how does Freight Farms do that then?
Yeah. So our purpose, our mission is all about democratizing access to fresh food. I'm sure Caroline said that to you in that's like our trademark.
And Mario is living it. So
exactly. And Mario's living it, and he's living it very well. We're really excited about the work that he's doing and where he's going to be in the future. Yeah. But Freight Farms is essentially addressing that by essentially saying that the current food production system that we have in place, let's take for the U.S., for example, where a large portion of our fresh produce comes from the Southwest and California and is distributed throughout the country. That supply chain, that domestic supply chain alone, has been significantly stressed. So what are the impacts when you can bring production to a community firsthand, where logistics and farm to table, that period of time is potentially minutes or hours.
Think about it.
It's an amazing impact. Not only from a food production standpoint, but food quality, nutritional standpoint, also economic standpoint, providing jobs and sort of micro markets and micro opportunities for people. It's been a really fascinating trend to see on the front lines. And
one thing I was looking at was just yesterday I saw on CNN that they were talking about the drought throughout the Southwest and the West in the United States. And it's gotten to the point where they're going to stop calling it a drought. They're just going to call it the normal condition, is that there ain't no water.
No water.
and then thinking about how Freight Farms is so economical when it comes to water usage. I don't know how much you can talk about the technical aspect of that, but that alone and the potential to not only maintain the supply of fresh vegetables in these drought-laden areas, but it could actually increase the production through the methods that Freight Farms use. Can you talk a little bit about the economy of it, the smart usage of both soil, water, and nutrients in Freight Farms, and what that means and what that can mean for both the supply chain and the production line?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's one of the largest propositions that we offer our prospective farmers, and why we see so much interest from areas, different geographic and topographical areas, like a Norway, but also in the Middle East or Caribbean island nations, all of which geographically very different, but experience the exact same challenges when it comes to resource scarcity and reliance and dependency on food, on the supply chain, food supply chain. So Freight Farms we've been around for 11 years, and that's given us the opportunity to really refine our technology and improve upon it, not only in our own research and development, but in tandem with our farmers that we've grown with. And a big part of that is striving for the most economic, but also resource efficient technology possible. And we're very proud as to where the technology is today.
Yeah.
So from a resource standpoint, the farm itself is a 40 by 10 foot freight container. It's sort of your standard size freight container. The grow capacity and the grow space within that container, pending the type of crop that you're growing, is anywhere between 2.5 and 3.5 acres.
That's amazing.
So
that is amazing.
Isn't it? It's really incredible. I was in our headquarter farms just the other day. We were able to go in person for the first time, which was very neat.
Nice.
And I stepped into our headquarter farms, and
that's in Boston, right?
In Boston. Yeah, it's right under the 93 freeway, I think. I always get 90 and 93 mixed up. But I walked in, and healthy, full heads of chive and mint were growing, and the smell was just so amazing. You could just pick it right off.
It must be almost dreamlike to experience that. I'm just putting myself into the sight and the smell of that in a city environment, in an urban environment.
Exactly.
But here you have this piece of fabricated nature right in the middle of that.
It's really incredible. You're in one of the most industrial cities, in the Western Hemisphere, and then you step into this Star Wars like environment, and you see fresh produce growing, and it's amazing. That alone, that sort of experience, I think, makes it super tangible for people, and we're really hoping to bring more people on site once things loosen up. And
I can remember Caroline. I can remember Caroline telling me when I spoke with her on her episode when she was with me, talking about how people who are working, on site at the headquarters, they use that headquarters farm as almost like a break area where they can just walk in and just and smell the smells and see the greenery, and it just does something with them. And then I kind of extrapolated that line of thought to when I was speaking with Mario, and asking him what it's like to actually work hands-on with it. And he said it is so therapeutic. Yeah. It calms you to work with this. For those who don't know, we're talking about, maybe I should have said this at the beginning, we're talking about shipping containers, basically. What are they, 40 square meters, I believe?
So it's a 40 by 10 foot.
40 by 10 foot, yeah.
Freight container, yeah. So I can't make that conversion to the proper units right now.
So it's this enclosed, green, vibrant, living farm, enclosed, and it can be placed absolutely anywhere. As long as you have access to electricity, you can do this. It doesn't matter where you are. You don't have to be out in a rural country, traditional farming area. This can be happening in the middle of a city, and it does happen in the middle of cities. So I say that for the benefit of people who are not familiar. I guess I kind of got carried away with my own enthusiasm and forgot that maybe people are tuning in for the first time to hear about this. Yeah.
You're, as the podcast expert, I think kudos to you. That was I didn't pick up on that. As the third installment, I was just trying to add some more color to everything.
But let it be said for listeners. Let it be said for listeners and viewers. There are 2 previous episodes with 2 different people that have strong and meaningful involvement in freight farms. So just go back and check out those episodes. In fact, I'll link to them in the episode description. So I had to say that for the benefit of
Of course, there are two other components, I think, to the resource conversation that I just want to hit on, just so I'm covering your question for the listeners here. So we talked about land preservation. So in general, we're talking about 90% less land for comparable grow spaces that's 90%. Being used with. Yeah, it's really quite something. And then you can't stack a soil-based farm operation. Can't put land on top of land, but you can put containers on top of containers, and that's where that's part of the fold and part of the puzzle of economies of scale here, and why scalability and building an actual business around this it presents a significant opportunity for a lot of people. The second component is in terms of water consumption. There are two main tanks within the farm, one that's dedicated for a nursery station, the other that's dedicated for the main cultivation area. It's a closed loop system, but in terms of the actual consumption that the plants are taking on a daily basis, it's approximately 5 gallons of water, which again, if you look at a comparable grow space, 2.5, 3.5 acres, it's just about 99% less water.
That's amazing. That is absolutely, and that's why it fascinates me when I see what's happening with the drought situation in the Southwest and West, and what you guys can do. It solves problems. It literally solves problems.
And the Southwest in particular, like Southern California, is really notorious for importing water to sustain the culture and the society that now resides there, sourcing from first the Rockies and then going Pacific Northwest and now looking south. Yeah. It's sad to see that's the results of it, but I think it's small solutions like this that have tangible impact in a number of different areas, right? Yeah. You can consume less water, but how else can a freight farm be leveraged not only in food production, but impact on the youth and philanthropic ventures and economic stimulus? So many different avenues where, the more sort of solutions that we can come up with, not just freight farms, but generally speaking, I think will lead to long-term benefits for those communities.
Can you talk about the viability of it as a business model? I mean, it is, for me anyway, as someone who is extremely interested, but I haven't gotten actively involved in it, it looks fairly straightforward and simple to turn into, when it comes to turning it into a viable business, and a business that one can actually live off of and profit from. Of course, there's the effect that it can have on the near community, on the greater society, but there's also that rather necessary egotistical thing, which means I have to make a living, and this is something that someone can make a living from. Can you talk about that from the initial point of interest for the individual to where it actually becomes a working business? How long and how difficult a path is that for an individual?
Yeah, well, I think that's a great question. So we currently have approximately 400 farms worldwide, 33 different countries, and just about all 50 states. The majority of those farmers are small business, what we would identify as small business entrepreneurial farmers, about 60 to 70%. Yeah. Which I think speaks towards the viability of freight farms as a business.
Now, do you know how many? I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just want to plug in this question. Do you have an idea of how many? What's the average number of containers that these individual farmers have? Are they mostly sitting with one, or is it
That's a great question. I'd say I don't have a good answer for you off the top of my head. A lot of our customers are repeat customers because where you start to see economies of scale and significant ROI is with that third and fourth container.
I see.
So meaning you can start to realize synergies. You can start to cut costs in management and operations as well as distribution that allow you to, while also ramping up production and maintaining a premium product, commanding a high price point, and therefore driving top line and overall bottom line.
So then having 3 or 4 containers or possibly even more is not uncommon in the freight farms world. Okay. Interesting. Interesting.
So what we typically, because this is a new, farming as a practice is nothing new, but farming in a freight farm, that is still a relatively new concept. Yeah. So what we typically see and what we recommend is taking the crawl, walk, run approach if you're doing this for a for-profit venture. Yeah. Let's start with one container and let's make sure that, one, you feel really comfortable with the technology and how to grow with it, and just the comfort on operating it by yourself, while also finding your niche within your local market, the channels of distribution and your customer base that you're going to be targeting. Once you've mastered those and have some cash flow, let's start thinking about scaling to that second and that third container.
Because from what I understand, you guys are quite helpful in establishing, the supply chain and reaching out and making contacts so that you have a market for so that the individual has a market for their vegetables. But of course, that takes brain power, work, and networking from that individual. So it's not like, hey, Freight Farms, help me get this started, and then the farmer just kind of leans back and you guys step in. It's not that way at all. It requires a little sweat from the individual, but at the same time, it's not difficult. I mean, you don't have to be a farmer from before. You can come into this. Can I say green? You can come into this with no experience.
You certainly can. It's a great pun.
In other words, it's
you're
doable.
Absolutely right.
The average person can do this, correct?
Yes, absolutely. And I'd say to back things up here and for the audience, I'll tell you a little bit about my job. My official title is an account executive. I'm on the sales and business development team here at Freight Farms. And what my job ends up being most of the time is essentially being a business consultant, where we realize Freight Farms as a company is not a franchise. We are essentially a manufacturer. We provide a toolkit. However you want to use that toolkit is totally up to our customers. So for those that are looking at this as a for-profit venture, a big part of my role then becomes, okay, what are your financial and production goals? We're going to build a project/business plan based off that. We're going to outline financial models for you. We're going to chart out what potential avenues for distribution are. If there's any financial support that's needed, we'll help assist them in that process. We don't actually provide financing, but we'll assist them in engaging financiers. So it's very much a business consultation. And that is, we take that very hands-on white glove approach to ensure that when people are making this pivot, after they've gone through this introspection, they're looking for this new career and making a shift, that they feel very confident executing on that plan and that we're going to meet those goals. So yes, very doable. There is work that needs to be done, not only from a growing and farming standpoint, but also building your business. And we can advise on, how much time you're willing to work and spend on this. We can advise on different models to adopt that might be suitable for your needs and your business.
Now, as a I've already answered my own question before I even asked it. I was going to ask, as a business consultant or Freight Farms as a business, why would Freight Farms not, you advise or you help people to get financing? Why would Freight Farms not finance these individual entrepreneurs? But then I guess the answer is because Freight Farms is not a franchise. So there's my answer, I guess, right?
So that's part of it. Certainly as an organization, we can go through a certification process where we become an official financier. And frankly, I think that is part of our future. It's a little above my pay grade.
Well, my thought was that it would put you guys in a position to push Freight Farms out there even more aggressively, be even more prolific if you guys were actually a financial source for people who want to, it kind of cuts out the middleman and shortens the process so that people can get started quicker.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The investment that farmers need to make for one container, let alone 3 containers, it's not chump change that we're talking here. No. It is an investment. So you're absolutely right. If we're able to provide financial assistance, it would certainly escalate things and allow us to provide just more support for our farmers and getting more farms out the door, which is, as a business, we would love to do. I think it is part of our roadmap for the future because Like I said, more often than not, our farmers, especially individual and the small business farmers, they are going to be looking for some sort of financial support.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right. If we can provide that, eliminates additional steps and tasks of approaching financiers and third parties.
Right. I love it when I'm right. I say I have good ideas every once in a while.
Once in a while.
Once
John,
in a
I'd say you're right more often than not, man.
Hey, man, could you please tell that to my wife? She finds a way to politely.
She's got a recording now, so you can just show her this.
She doesn't watch this. She has no idea. She doesn't even know what my podcast is called, for God's sakes. No, she finds a way to politely call me an idiot every day. Politely, though.
You're a rock star over there. Sometimes it's important to be kept humble.
You know what? I'm so humble as long as I'm living in this house with that woman. Absolutely. Hello, Snoopy. I love you. No, she's something else. She definitely keeps me humble. But back to this whole thing about the average Joe or Jane who wants to get started in this. I get the impression when I read you guys' literature online and I've watched your videos and and speaking with Mario and with Caroline, it's like I say, it seems doable. But at the same time, you can't expect everything to go smooth. But you guys have an internal, let's call it educational system, correct? Don't you guys have a facility that farmers can go to learn techniques and whatnot? Can you talk a little bit about that? I don't know if that's your specialty or not, but maybe you can say a little bit of something to that person who's on the fence and says, wow, I would love to do this, but oh my God, it sounds, John's saying it sounds doable, but I don't know how to farm. So what do you say to that person? What do you guys have in place to support them?
Absolutely. I'd say you're not alone. We fully recognize that this is a relatively new practice and methodology and approach to farming. With that being said, I think the most critical component to our offering is our client services team. This is a stellar cast of people that they're a series of agricultural, technological, horticultural experts that are not only responsible for training and onboarding our new farmers, but are there to support them throughout the lifetime of the farm.
Okay, so it's not like once they've, paid for their container and gotten their education from you guys and they get started. You guys don't just say adios and good luck. You guys are there.
At the end of the day, because we are not a franchise and because there are so many different use cases and ways to leverage the technology, we want to equip them with all the knowledge and know-how to go fly on their own.
Yeah.
That would be great. Just so they, we don't have to take that big brother approach where we're looking over their shoulders all the time. Yeah. That being said, we want to be there in the event that there are questions and that support is needed. So I think the fact our global footprint is, I think, a testament to the sort of repeatable, scalable process that we have in supporting customers, not only domestically, but internationally as well.
Right.
So questions regarding the technology and the platform itself, we're there for that. Yeah. Questions on best practices when it comes to growing certain produce or experimentation, or perhaps you're just trying to engage with the network itself, the network of farmers, that is. Yeah. I'd say that's sort of a sub category or a sub unit of our support is that because we're focused on a localized approach to food production, it's very rare, if ever, do our farmers come up against one another in a competitive fashion. So I think, and our leadership, I think, recognize that very early on and uses that to our advantage. So we have events on a consistent basis where we're inviting existing farmers and new farmers to engage with one another. We highly encourage and have the platform now through our software where farmers can engage one another, share experiential, anecdotal information, but also the quantitative information, data points on what are the best practices to growing a butterhead lettuce, and what sort of variations and tweaks can I do to optimize that head or change the texture and taste.
I see that some of these people are
valuable.
And I see that some of these people are real good about blogging about their experiences with freight farms, both written and video blogs on YouTube and stuff, talking about what they're experiencing, and it's so just kind of reinforces my idea of the viability of that platform. It reinforces the image I get of it being a group of people who are, like you say, they're not in competition with each other. They're trying to learn from each other and support each other. And when I see these blogs that are put out and some of the videos that you guys put up, it just reinforces that thought. I mean, it's great marketing, and there's no falsehood in it at all. It's a straightforward account of how people are managing the Freight Farms platform, and it just makes it look attractive.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd say it's not only for prospective farmers and new members to our community, it's super valuable for us as a company as well. And I think
it's direct feedback.
It's direct feedback. But when we have farmers like, Demario is a great example of this. He started experimenting with CBD and cannabis and is now fully pursuing that. And he's been an excellent resource for us on sort of research and development that it takes to really refine our technology that's going to be suitable for that plant. That happens on the macro scale, and it's so super helpful for us in our own research and development. But we can then take that feedback and disperse it to the entire community.
There you go. Yeah.
So everyone reaps the benefits.
I think you guys are doing a fantastic job, and it seems like it would be such a fun place to work. I'm talking about the headquarters, the people at people like you and Caroline, you guys just really seem to be enjoying your job. You guys are always smiling, and there's the sense of humor, and you guys, I'm sure you guys are working hard and doing a lot of work, but you guys don't seem stressed at all. You've been working pretty much from home?
That's correct. Yeah. So
where are you located? Where are you located now?
I'm currently in the great state of Maine. So a few hours north of Boston. I was formerly in Park City, Utah, kicking it out there while I was working remotely.
That's right. That's why I got the time messed up, because I put the time as if you were in, I think I was thinking Central Time or something, but you're on the East. See, that explains it. Yeah, that explains it.
I like to stay off the radar. I'm a hard man to track.
You are, man.
But yes, so I'm relatively new to the company. I would actually say that I'm no longer a vet at this point. Or actually, I would say I am a vet at this point.
No longer a rookie.
A newbie. Yeah, exactly. But I'm only 5 months in. I started in January, and we've been remote since then. Yeah.
That recent. What'd you do before?
So I was formerly from the software world. I'm sorry, are you getting a little background noise?
No, not at all.
Can you hear anything? Okay, perfect.
There's medication for that. Those voices in your head, and do you want to talk to my wife? She's a psychiatric nurse. She can.
I might take you up on that. It's been one of those weeks. What was I saying? So prior to Freight Farms, I graduated from Bowdoin College, which is a small liberal arts school up here in Maine. Okay. So I have a very strong affinity for this place. I have to imagine it's somewhat. It is. Thank you. I know from your travels and your, I believe, truck driving, you've come through here a few times. Yeah. I think one of the most underappreciated places on the planet, or at least in the U.S. But I can imagine very similar to Norway. I've never been to Norway, but topographically speaking, somewhat similar.
Yes, absolutely.
Interesting. So I graduated from college in 2017. I immediately went into an account management role in the software world at a company called LogMeIn, and it was one of the largest software companies in the world at the time. And our focus was, we operated in three main business units: remote connectivity, support, and communications, as well as cybersecurity. Yeah. And it was a fantastic experience. Really enjoyed the people that I worked with. Acquired I think a lot of skills that I may not have gotten in other entry level roles, and am super appreciative of that. But I got to a point where I was sort of plateauing what I was learning and was looking to make that next move and provide into a new space.
So how long were you with that company before you started to feel that urge to move on to get more challenges?
So I was with them for 3.5 years.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And how far in? Oh, so it started at 3.5 years. That's pretty much when you decided you needed to move along.
Good question. No, I'd say, probably around the 3-year mark, that I started feeling this urge to find the next step.
So you didn't accept the status quo for too long. Some people do that. They'll have a feeling that they need to move on, but they don't for sometimes years at a time. And then the bitterness sinks in, and then their productivity goes down, and so on and so on and so on. But it sounds like you did something with that feeling. You did get out. You did go further and change direction.
Yeah. And I think it's important to say, I was very lucky not to have been impacted by COVID. A lot of people were.
Yes.
I was very fortunate enough where my company, since we're all focused on remote connectivity, is actually sort of the perfect storm for us. Business was very good. But I still, despite how well we were doing, I wasn't getting that sense of utility and fulfillment in what I was doing, what I was selling. If I was going to be selling something to the community and providing it, I wanted to be something that I'm going to believe in, that I know is going to have tangible impact.
I've never understood people's willingness to just keep on spinning their wheels in a career that doesn't stimulate them in some way. So again, hats off to you for making that change, because a lot of people don't. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't. They'll just keep spinning their wheels. There's no progress. There's no new challenges, and the bitterness sits in. And then
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think, people, I'm sure you come across this in your discussions with all the different people that you meet with and you bring onto this podcast. People's circumstances are so variable. They're different. And some people are required to accept the status quo because it is steady. It is consistent. Consistent pay if they're supporting a family or something like that.
Right.
I was at a period in my life where I didn't have those responsibilities, and I was fortunate enough to be in a position where I could take some risk. And I think for those that are able to do so in this really fast moving world that we live in and we find ourselves, if you find yourself in a position where you don't feel like you're growing or learning, I think that's a really dangerous place to be.
That is a beautiful statement. That is people, say it out loud for the people in the back. That is so important. You have to, no, I don't want to interrupt. I'm sorry. Keep going. That's a beautiful thought. It is.
Thank you. I'm not sure I had more to add to that, but I think in order to stay, especially if you're in business, for-profit ventures and verticals, if you want to stay relevant and competitive, always learning, always acquiring new skills and positioning yourself to excel is really, really important. And when I started having that recognition at my first job, that I was, I'm not really learning anything. I feel like I'm not challenging myself. What can I do to improve? I pursued a certificate of advanced management at Babson's Olin MBA school, or business school. I did that at night to round out my skill set that I felt that I was lacking in order to get to the next step.
Right. Yeah.
So I was pursuing that while also working, and then started to look for this next job, and ultimately ended up at Freight Farms. But I think it's, again, the comfort and complacency, I've been taught, is a very dangerous thing.
Well, I think in general in life, and this is in life, it's not necessarily just in the aspects of a business life or a career. I think in life, period, if you get in a situation where you don't feel like you're learning new things, if you don't feel that you are strengthening yourself, then it's time to do a really deep introspective search and figure out what your real purpose is, and then act on that. And that will lead you to the new knowledge. That'll lead you to the building of your own. I use a metaphor of having a backpack full of life experience. That
backpack is full.
It's full. Well, the fuller it is, and here's the thing, to continue the metaphor, the fuller that backpack is, the heavier it is, and the heavier it is, the harder you have to work to carry it, and then the harder you work, the stronger you get, which will then in turn make the load lighter. And that's a process that it should never stop in life. And again, you can apply that to everything you do, whether it's your career, whether it's your family life, your social life, your friendships, your physical fitness, your mental fitness. You've got a backpack there with experiences that you can then use to train yourself further along that path of life. And it sounds like you're a young cat, and a lot of young people never contemplate these things. I'm young, I'm a 20-something, and life is fun, and I'm having fun, and fun, and fun, and fun.
Right.
and they miss the lessons that they could learn that could actually allow even more room for that fun part of life, because you've learned those lessons. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. I might be a young cat, but I consider myself an old soul.
Young cat, you consider yourself an old dog?
Yeah, exactly. And I was very fortunate. I can't understate how fortunate I was to have the upbringing that I did, the education that I did, the family that I did.
You were born in New York?
That's right. Yeah, I was born and raised in New York, Westchester, New York, and just north of the city.
Solid education, solid family, good
amazing
role models.
Yeah. Exactly. It was the perfect recipe to help me get where I am today, and I can't. I'm nothing without those people in that network.
That's just beautiful.
Yeah,
well, we are the sum. That. We are the sum of our near environment. Meaning family.
Totally agree. You're the product of the people that you spend time with, and it's you. I feel like you've. That's a really interesting metaphor for you with all the people that you've spoken to. But
absolutely,
something that I always try to embrace and a mantra that I live by. It's actually some of the best advice I've ever gotten. I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but before going to college, my brother, my best friend. He gave me a piece of advice, and he just said, "Tommy, give everyone a chance."
Wow,
and because you never know who's going to be your best friend, or who's going to pick you up when you've fallen down.
Isn't that so true?
Yeah. And words that I try and live by, which is difficult to do in a pandemic. And kind of coming full circle here when we're talking about career path and life changes. When you're confined to a single environment without these interactions, without these experiences, with this feeling of limitation, it's really hard to try and think introspectively on where you're being limited and where you can make change, and then acting on those changes and seeing tangible results. So it's not an easy practice going through a career or life change, but there are tools that you can use to start thinking about it and start outlining what a plan of action or
that comes back to that solid upbringing, that network of family members and close friends who you can draw on for their experiences. Your brother gave you that piece of advice that you're probably going to carry with you the rest of your life. But how do you stay happy? I mean, again, I said this, you and Caroline working there, you guys just have this glowing happiness that you guys are just so satisfied with the work that you're doing. How does that satisfaction not turn into complacency? Are you still pushing boundaries? Are you still trying to, expand your wealth of knowledge at Freight Farms and the work that you're doing now?
Absolutely. And
you say that because your boss might be listening, right?
Well, I mean, whether I'm trying to or not, it's still such a new space for me that I feel like every single day I'm learning something new.
Yeah.
And it's not even through my own pursuit. It's just circumstantial. Exactly. I'm in the right place at the right time.
And in all seriousness, you guys are doing important work. I mean, the stuff that can happen through Freight Farms can potentially change society, but it is changing society. Again, just looking at what Mario's doing, it's changed his neighborhood, which will then change that area of the city, which then may change the entire city, and so on. I mean, it's exponential.
Exactly. And I think for people who are motivated by things like that, I consider myself one of them. Waking up in the morning and reminding yourself of that. Taking the time to remind yourself of that, it's really easy to get motivated and get back to work. I think in talking about happiness, and this might be a bit of a tangent, but
absolutely not.
I'm
happiness. Happiness is no tangent on this podcast.
Okay. I love that. I'm a firm believer that happiness is within your control, and it is an exercise that you need to work on.
Yeah.
It falls very close in line and in tandem with mental health. And there are, there are practices that, depending on the type of person that you are, you need to follow in order to make sure that you're staying happy and, feeling purposeful and things like that. There is so much in this life that is not within our control.
Yeah.
But I think happiness is one of those things that is, despite what people may think are the elements impacting happiness and what constitute happiness. There's a lot that you can do to change circumstance or change perspective.
Very well said. Yeah. Let's set the record straight. I've had some challenges in my day, but there are people who have gone through far worse, and it's way easier said than done. But saying that happiness is within your control. Absolutely.
But
and back to
I'd
that
still
metaphor.
Fall through that.
And back to that metaphor, these challenges that you've met so far, there's people who've had worse challenges, but still your challenges are your challenges, and your victories over those challenges, that whole experience goes into your backpack. And that's something that you will draw upon in the years to come. Mm-hmm. When we think about happiness and that we are in control of our happiness, you're in control of your happiness, and you seem to be controlling it quite well. Is that an active? Is that an active endeavor? Do you actively engage in that reflection and that introspection? Do you consistently evaluate your standing in life when it comes to your own moral code and whatnot? Is that an active process for you?
Certainly. And I think it's become all the more active during the past year and a half, 2 years with the pandemic, because we, as a global community, were confined to not only just a physical space, but as a result, it seems like there is this imprisonment mentally.
Yes.
I praise myself for taking the steps to actively work on how do we break down those barriers, and how do we, despite the circumstances, how do we maintain happiness and a positive outlook. And it absolutely is an active practice. There are things that I know I need to do during the day that are going to set me up for a great day, not only to be productive at work, but also engaging with my friends and family that I love, and going out and exercising and eating well and all those things. And that I know at the end of the day, when I get back into bed, I can have a sigh of relief, not relief, but just a sigh of appreciation and gratitude, and know that it was a great day.
It sounds like you have a good view of all aspects of happiness, because happiness is not one dimensional. It's not just having that fulfilling job. It's not having that good salary at the job. It's not just having a good time on the weekend with your friends. It's all of these things. and there's things that have to be in place in order to optimalize all of those individual things that encompass the wholeness of happiness. Sounds like you got a good handle on that.
It's a work in progress, which I'd say
sure,
is for
absolutely.
everyone.
It's a never ending.
And that's exactly, it's none of it is. There's no end point to it all. There's just, the journey along the way, as they say. It's I'd say constant practice and refining and learning from what's working, what's not. That I think that ultimately leads to a more consistent happiness level and satisfaction and growth and learning.
I love it. I just it's so enjoyable. And you and I have spoken a lot. This is the first time you've been on my podcast, but we've spoken a lot on the telephone, a couple of Zoom conferences together. And I leave every conversation a little bit happier than I was going into it. I don't know if it's the subject matter. I don't know if it's our chemistry as people. I don't know if it's just you, but something when we talk, it can't be just.
Can't be. No way.
But I always leave the conversation a little bit better off, and that's something to be cultivated. This is I don't know, what do we call this? Is this a working relationship? Is this a friendship, or is it both? Let's say it's both. But I'm loving it.
Both.
I'm loving it. It's a journey that I've started with you, and again, I'm on fire for all things freight farms. Let me ask.
The feeling's mutual.
Well,
absolutely.
Thank you, man.
Certainly look forward to our conversations all the time, because I know I'd say your happiness level, your enjoyment, your aura in general is also, it's very intoxicating. So when I leave those calls, I'm feeling very rejuvenated as well. But you always have a new story. There's always something new going on in the world of John Allen Reese.
I have to keep exploring, man. I have to keep exploring.
Filling that backpack.
I was just going to say that. Filling up that backpack. And again, maybe this is my power lifter mentality, but the heavier it gets, the stronger it's going to make me, and it's just going to put me in a better position. So it's a never-ending thing. It just keeps going, and I'm loving the journey. Let me ask you something, Tommy. I have two things I want you to do for me, if you would, please, before we wind this up. I'm going to say 3 words, and then I want you to fill in the blanks afterwards. Okay? Totally unprepared, but here we go.
I've never been a wordsmith.
Here is your improv debut. Okay.
Okay.
Saturday Night Live is watching. Okay. No, this is fairly simple, straightforward. Tommy Garry is.
I'd say empathetic.
I would say empathetic as well. Okay. Tommy Garry.
It's just one word.
It's just one word, but but you know what? That says a lot. Empathetic can be the foundation of so many different things that can lead to progress, both for you as the empathizer, but also for the person or persons with whom you share empathy. Right.
And I think in the, if we just take the professional scope here, if we're looking at empathy within the professional realm, for my job in particular, engaging with prospective farmers and potential clients, the core of it is around empathy. On being able to understand, without having their own experience, being able to understand what their situation is, what the challenges are, and how we can potentially get them from point A to point B, that ideal future place that they have in mind.
Beautiful.
But I also think that from a long-term vision, as well as my own personal goals, being empathetic allows me to engage with all of my colleagues, I think, in a great way. And also is, as you mentioned, the foundation for really strong relationships, but for an organization that has direction, has purpose, is going to follow that purpose, and execute on its goals. I think it's a really critical trait that leadership and all employees at an organization need to have.
That's very well stated.
Progress.
That's very well stated. I could picture you giving a like a 5-minute pep talk at some sort of internal seminar at Freight Farms and saying exactly those words. Seriously, saying exactly those words, and people will walk out of it so motivated to go back to their job at Freight Farms and make things better. I mean, that's so well stated.
You're always gassing me up, John. I'm sorry.
That. I'm sorry. I apologize for motivating you. I'm sorry.
No, absolutely not. I think that's a really interesting idea. And I certainly, I've never done anything like that, but I certainly try the same way when I'm talking to you and learning from you. I try and bring that sort of energy to all my conversations, especially in this remote world.
You do it well.
Thank you.
You do it well. Absolutely.
But in a world where you can't engage with people in office or in person, you don't, you really can't pick up on their energy and feed off that. So you have these limited interactions via video conference, and you gotta try and bring every sort of quality that you think can help enable and improve your team and that person on the other end as well.
Well, I see the challenges of video conferencing, in this time of isolation and COVID-19. I see the challenges in that you may miss certain nuances of the personality. But that's as a receiver of what someone is giving. But as a giver during these video conferences, yes, there is the challenge of projecting what you want to project. But oh my gosh, what you gain by embarking on that endeavor to project your thoughts, with the... I almost said with the loss of body language, but here I am talking with my hands. But you have to find some way to get your point across in as organic a way as you can in this horribly inorganic platform, which is video.
Right.
So rising to that challenge can mean tremendous growth in communication skills. I'm getting that on a daily basis through my podcast. So in a sense, I have actually grown immensely through these times of COVID and stuff. And
certainly,
how fortunate are we? How fortunate are we to be able to experience that?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. There is certainly some appreciation that needs to be had with the sort of interaction that we're confined to right now with video and phone calls. But I think it's like the age old saying, like you get out what you put into it. And Absolutely. If you're going to put in that effort, you will, I think, receive it. And whether it's immediate or whether it's in long run, there are long-term dividends to that.
Now to wind things up, I want to ask you to do one more thing for me. I want you to imagine yourself, you're sitting out on a beautiful hillside there in Maine, and you have a randomly chosen cast of my viewers and listeners, and they're sitting there in front of you.
Interesting.
This is at the tail end of maybe a 3-hour-long conversation outdoors.
Okay.
Where you've all just been sharing ideas. You've been leading this discussion, but everyone has been actively taking part. And now you want to wind it up and you want to leave them with something that you feel will carry them through the day, maybe through the next couple of days as they travel back home to wherever they live. What would you say to that gathering of listeners? What would you say to them to lift them up and carry them through the next day or two?
I'd first say thank you for listening to me for the last 3 hours. That's impressive in and of itself. I'm not sure who would do that, but if I was going to leave a group of people with feeling inspired and motivated, it's another sort of mantra that I lived by that my dad always told me was dare to fail.
Dare to fail.
Dare to fail. So
I'm
whatever it is that
I'm writing that down. Yeah. Dare to fail.
It's no matter what sort of project, adventure, job that you have, don't be afraid to take risks. Calculated risks, not stupid risks. Calculated risks. that are not only going to better that endeavor that you're working on, but they're going to help you grow as well. There's no greater reward without some risk. So you have to be willing and able to make that. And in so doing, yes, you might fail, but that's sort of the beauty of it, is that when you fail, you're going to learn from that experience. And the next time you dare to fail, you can bring that experience with you. And hopefully that leads to ultimate success, whatever success looks like for you.
There you go. Wise words from a wise young man. Tommy Garry, who is empathetic. Tommy Garry, who says, dare to fail. Tommy Garry from Freight Farms, everybody. Tommy, thank you so much for this hour. It's been, in fact, exactly an hour right now. Thank you for this time that you've given me. Again, like I say, I'm leaving this conversation better off than I was before it started. So thank you so much.
Likewise, John.
That.
Yeah, likewise. It was my pleasure. Believe me, it's my pleasure.
So go forth and and do your good works there in Maine, and do your good works through Freight Farms. I absolutely love the work you're doing, Tommy. Tommy Garry, everybody. Be well.
Thank you. Thanks, John. Take care.